Hi, this is James again, and back with another video, and this one was, I have a couple that I'm fairly certain I wanted to do next, and this was one of the two. So this is top 10 dramas. And I think it's a pretty solid list of movies, and I will just get right into it. Number 10, we have a film called Green Street Hooligans. It's also known as Green Street. And there's a couple direct-to-video sequels, which I haven't seen because they don't involve any of the characters from the original. And they may be good. I just haven't seen them yet. Well, this one's done by Lexi Alexander, the one who did Punisher Warzone. And she's got a few other movies out there, but I'm not that familiar with them. But this one is basically... it stars Elijah Wood and Charlie Hunnam. And Elijah Wood, he's a student at Harvard, and through some event, they discover cocaine in his dorm room, and he gets expelled from Harvard. And to keep him quiet about it, well, he kind of wants to keep quiet about it anyway because his roommate comes from a very wealthy family, so they offer him $10,000 to keep quiet. So he takes the money, leaves Harvard, and then goes over to England to visit his sister, who lives there. She's married to a guy named Steve, and they have a kid. And he ends up becoming friends with Pete, because Steve's. Her husband Steve, his brother Pete, played by Charlie Hunnam, sort of takes him around town and discovers that he's a member of local. They call them firms. He has the Green Street Elite, and it's sort of like they're soccer hooligans, football hooligans or whatever, which are sort of, I guess you could call them like super fans of the football teams over there, but they also act as sort of like gangs and get into fights and stuff, support their team but defend their territory. And he sort of, by showing his bravery in a street fight, sort of gets inducted into their firm. And most of the movie is them getting to know each other, becoming friends in the firm, but also secrets, or I'd say history comes out where Pete's brother Steve, who's like Elijah Wood's sister's husband, is the former leader of that firm, who got out of it after the son of one of a rival firm's guys died and just retired from the life. And I won't get too much into it because it is good to watch the movie unfold, and there's great performances. Elijah Wood and Charlie Hunnam are great in it, and the actor who plays Steve, Mark Warren. But it is, and I will try and watch the sequels one of these days. But this is a great first film in that series. So that's Green Street Hooligans, or Green Street, as it's also known. Okay, the next one we have is called Peaceful Warrior, and this is based on a book by Dan Millman, and it's sort of this could have also gone on a top 10 true stories list, which I do plan on doing one of these days. It's sort of based on his life as a gymnast at a college, and he's sort of like a star. I guess he's good on the rings and the pommel horse. And one night he stops by a gas station and he meets a very odd individual, played by Nick Nolte, who seems very, very, very old and wise and has a weird philosophical outlook. And Dan, the character in the movie Dan, because it's based on his life, Dan nicknames him Socrates just because all the wisdom he spouts out. And he ends up getting in a motorcycle accident, shattering his leg. He thinks he's never gonna perform gymnastics anymore, but he goes on the path to rehab, but also enlists the help of Socrates, who teaches him a different outlook on life, a way to get his mind right and get back to focus on what's important, get back to what he values in life. And let me see, you've got Amy Smart is also in there, plays a character named Joy, sort of like a love interest for Dan at one point or another. And I will say the movie's done by Victor Salva, who did the Jeepers Creepers films. It was one of the ones he did. There were several movies he did, well, a few movies he did in between the second Jeepers Creepers and the third Jeepers Creepers, but that didn't get much recognition. But I have read the book that this is based on, which I believe is called Way of the Peaceful Warrior, and I've seen a couple featurettes on the real man himself, Dan Millman, and he seems like an interesting kind of guy, and that Socrates wasn't exactly based on one guy, sort of one or two, sort of an amalgamation of a few guys, or someone he didn't call Socrates, but was kind of like that character. And it's a pretty interesting movie. And the star of it is Scott Mechlowitz, who the only other things I'd really seen him in around this time was he's the lead in Eurotrip. He's Scotty, where you get the song Scotty Doesn't Know in the movie. And he was also in the movie Mean Creek, although I can't remember exactly the character he played, because it was just a bunch of kids versus one bully in that one. It's a pretty good movie. Anyway, that one's called Peaceful Warrior. Okay, number 8, we have a movie called The Emperor's Club. And this was done by Michael Hoffman, and it mainly stars Kevin Kline. It has a bunch of, I'd say, more than half the movie takes place back in the 70s, so it has a lot of younger actors. And the one that stands out would be what's his name? Emil Hirsch. And he's basically Kevin Kline plays William Hundert, who's a professor at a boys' boarding school. And it would be fair to say that it's the kind of teacher like in Dead Poet Society, not so much as a maverick, off-the-wall kind of teacher, but a teacher that inspires his kids to learn to do better in life. And he's got these kids that really, really respect him. And then he gets one kid that comes in late, and that's played by Emil Hirsch. And he's sort of like the kid who doesn't play by the rules and gets the other kids riled up. But eventually he gets him in line, only to be let down by him in one way, which I won't spoil. And then the movie jumps to present day, where he's about to become headmaster and doesn't get that, but his students come back for sort of a reunion, a celebration of him as a professor for like his tenure there and all this stuff. And you get all the kids back from that original class back in the 70s, and like the grown-up version of Emil Hirsch and all the other kids. And it's great to see the contrast of the kids then and the kids now, and how you still have Kevin Kline's character who's a lot older now, but he really hasn't changed much. His teaching style's the same, his lifestyle's the same. And it is really good to see the two time periods back and forth. But it's just a great movie in terms of students, the kind of movie where it's kids learning from a great teacher at school. So that is The Emperor's Club. Number seven, we have a film called One Night Stand. And this was a Mike Figgis film. And he's most notable for having done Leaving Las Vegas. I had seen a few of his films. Leaving Las Vegas, One Night Stand. There was another one he did, Time Code, which was sort of a thing a groundbreaking at the time, because the movie basically has four events going at the same time. It's like takes up 4 spots on the screen, 4 cameras going at the same time, and they all run simultaneously the length of the movie. But every once in a while, say the one up here, well, you'll be focusing on that, and the sound drops out, and then the one sound comes up for the one at the bottom right, or the sound drops out, and you focus on this one, and you focus on this one, and it goes throughout the whole movie. It's pretty good. It's more of a, I don't want to say more of a gimmick, but it's a decent story, but it was an interesting way to tell it. Back on point, this one Night Stand from 1997 is basically Wesley Snipes, Nastasia Kinski, Kyle MacLachlan, Ming-Na. It used to be Ming-Na Wen, but Ming-Na, and also Robert Downey Jr. is in there. And you've got Wesley Snipes and Ming-Na are a married couple with a couple of kids. And Wesley Snipes works in advertising, and he ends up going to New York City, and he bumps into Nastasia Kinski, her character, and they strike up a conversation, a friendship, and he's in town alone, she's in town alone. It's like, you know what, there's an opera tonight, why don't we meet up and go see the opera together, do something fun, whatever. So they do. I think he says he might be able to, but he might have something else to do, and his plans fall through, so he shows up there. And so they're both there, they both go watch the opera. After leaving the opera, they can get confronted by a mugger, and he tries to attack her, and Wesley Snipes' character Max defends her, fights off the attacker, but she's a little shaken up, so they go back to the hotel, and they end up getting together. Well, fast forward a year later, and Max is coming back to visit his close friend Charlie, played by Robert Downey Jr., who's from the art world, but he's dying of AIDS. He's in a hospital. And while he's there visiting, Charlie introduces Max to his brother, played by Kyle MacLachlan. Kyle MacLachlan comes in and introduces Max to his wife, which is played by Nastasia Kinski, who he met up with in New York and had the affair with. So there's a lot of that going on like how do they react to each other, how close do they get. And one of the things, I saw this a couple times in the theater, and one of the things I thought was most notable about this at the time was that it had one of the funniest sex scenes in it, similar to, say, like Jerry Maguire. But it's also a really good movie, really good score, I believe also done by Mike Figgis, because he also did his own score for Leaving Las Vegas. But it's great with the four principal actors and Robert Downey Jr. And I think this may have been prior to Robert Downey Jr.'s, I guess, resurgence, which started with Iron Man, or it may have been just after. I think it was before that, where he was still trying to get his life back on track. But yeah, great film, and a great first half and a great second half as well, which I won't get too far into, because it's good to see what happens with these 4 or 5 characters in the movie. So that one is One Night Stand. Okay, number 6. Number 6, we have a film called Ask Me Anything. This one I just found online randomly and thought, well, I'm a fan of Britt Robertson, and it also has Justin Long, Martin Sheen, Christian Slater, Robert Patrick. I'm like, you know what? I can't see how this could be that terrible with this quality of actors in it. And it's basically, you get Britt Robertson playing a character named Katie Campenfeld, and she has this online blog and has a bunch of followers. And she basically says, well, okay, this is what my name is going to be for this purpose, and I'm going to change the names of... It's sort of like one of those, the names and events have been changed to protect the innocent kind of thing, where she changed the name of certain people in her life and events just so keeps her anonymous. And the whole Ask Me Anything is her followers, like, asking her questions and stuff, and she about her life, so she decides to tell. And it's basically a student who has a boyfriend, gets involved with a teacher, played by Justin Long, who's married. She becomes a sort of a nanny for Christian Slater, who's married, and sort of like a young person having an affair with these older gentlemen. She's got a bit of a drunk father, played by Robert Patrick. She ends up getting a job at a bookstore run by Martin Sheen, who it turns out is convicted sexual offender, but you don't know exactly what happened. He doesn't talk about his past. Seems like a perfectly nice guy. And without mentioning what happens at the end, it is a very interesting story about all the things that this girl goes through, all the people she meets, and the events that her life goes through. And if you were to cut off the end of the movie, it would still be a good drama. But there's the ending of the movie that just, I think it would be accurate to call it a gut punch. And it just, like, your face just drops at the end of the movie a bit, and then it goes into the credits, and then there's this amazing song that I had to find that plays over the credits. But it's a great movie anyway, and it's just punctuated by this excellent, I guess you'd call it a coda. So that is Ask Me Anything. I believe it's based on a book, but I've never seen it anywhere. Okay, number 5, we have a movie called Jesus' Son. And this is a movie starring Billy Crudup. And this is based on a book. But this is basically a character who, if you look online or on the back of the DVD or VHS, I only have the VHS. I haven't been able to find the DVD anywhere. His character is credited as FH. And that stands for, keeping profanity out of it, the F word, head. F-head, or whatever you want to say. And he's a drug addict moving across the country and sort of like a nomad. But he's not necessarily that bright or that lucky, and he keeps getting into trouble. But the amount of people, which justifies the term F-head. And even you've got, because the quality of actors in this, you've got Billy Crudup, Samantha Morton, Holly Hunter, Dennis Hopper, Dennis Leary, Will Patton, Michael Shannon's in there, and Jack Black. And Jack Black, he does something really stupid, and Jack Black just like gets pissed at him. He's just like, that's why they call me F-head. And he's like, well, that's a name that's gonna stick. And he's like, I know. But he's basically going through this life and meeting all these interesting characters, and it sort of does have a happy ending where he ends up working at a rehab facility, and that's where he meets Dennis Hopper and Holly Hunter and them. But it's also one that's, like, I'm a big fan of movies with narration and voiceover, and Billy Crudup narrates a lot of this movie. And let me see, who's it done by? I believe it's directed by Allison McLean, and I haven't seen much of her work beyond this, but the movie, she just does a fantastic job. It's just one of those, a unique character that bumps into a bunch of other unique characters as he goes along his travels, and it's not so much a very linear story that you can describe. It's just a bunch of very interesting and quirky encounters that he has. So that's called Jesus' Son. Number 4 is a movie called Mud. And this is done by Jeff Nichols, who did Loving, he did Take Shelter, Midnight Special. And this one stars Matthew McConaughey and what's his name? Let me see. It's the Cyclops from the younger version of the X-Men. Ty Sheridan. You got Matthew McConaughey playing the character Mud. You got Ty Sheridan playing Ellis. Jacob Laughlin playing a character named Neckbone. Sam Shepard is in there. Sarah Paulson's in there. Michael Shannon's in there. Michael Shannon, who's worked with Jeff Nichols a lot. But you basically got the characters of Ellis and Neckbone who live near the Mississippi River and discover an abandoned boat on a small island there. And it turns out the boat is being occupied and lived in by Matthew McConaughey's character Mud. And they become friends with him, and he basically says like he's hiding out there waiting for his true love, played by Reese Witherspoon, to come back to him. But he's also a fugitive because he killed a man who was abusing Reese Witherspoon's character and stuff. So they're kids that go home, then come back and visit him without telling anybody and trying to help him out. And he's a very, very interesting character, the character of Mud. And it's just a pure acting piece, this movie. Like Ty Sheridan does a great job. Reese Witherspoon you don't see much, and Sam Shepard's in there a little bit, but it's all basically on Matthew McConaughey's shoulder in this movie, if you ask me, and I think he does a fantastic job. It's called Mud. Number 3, you have a movie called The Killer Inside Me. And this is a movie by Michael Winterbottom, I believe based on a book. It is based on a book from the 70s. And you basically got Casey Affleck, Jessica Alba, and Kate Hudson in there. And Casey Affleck plays a sheriff's deputy in the 50s who's a pillar of the community. And he's engaged to Kate Hudson, and then Kate Hudson's character, and he also starts an affair with a prostitute played by Jessica Alba. And there's sort of like, he seems like a very stand-up Law and Order kind of figure, but he's got I wouldn't say mean streak, I would say he's got a dark side, a very dark side. Like abusive and violent, murderous kind of thing. So like on the surface, he's a very stand-up guy, but behind the veil, he's very, very, can be menacing or protecting his own interests, I suppose. So he doesn't always treat people the way that they should, but how much can be done to one of the lawman. I know I'm not selling this one very well, but it's very, very expertly acted by Casey Affleck, and the movie looks gorgeous. It has a great soundtrack playing throughout. The cinematography is great. It's just it can be pretty violent and graphic at times, but in the same vein as, I would say, Drive and A History of Violence. Like, the violence can be extreme, but the movie is so damn gorgeous. You have to appreciate how well done the movie is. So that one is The Killer Inside Me. Number 2, we have another Billy Crudup film. This one is called Waking the Dead. This one is also based on a book, which I have seen in stores, but I have not got around to reading. And it's basically Billy Crudup is works for the Coast Guard, and he has political ambitions, and he is involved with Jennifer Connelly's character, who is a rights activist, demonstration, protest kind of thing. And the movie opens with him watching news footage of her death. I think she dies in a car explosion. And it jumps back in time to early in their relationship. And it sort of moves forward in his career, where he's advancing like through up the political ladder, and at the same time dealing with the fact that his young girlfriend or fiance disappeared and died, and then he's dealing with a sort of a brother who's a lifelong screw up druggie and stuff, making sure he's matched with the right political match, like the right, where he's marrying the right woman, getting the right job, being elected to the right position. And but he doesn't he sees Jennifer Connelly's character a few times, which leads him to believe that she's still alive. She's just in hiding because she was a wanted individual because of all her activism. But no one else sees her, and no one else believes that she could still be alive. So he gets to a point where he's very unstable, and there's a beautiful monologue, in a restaurant where he basically unravels in front of his friends and family. Just goes from calm to standing up, having a nervous breakdown, basically in front of a restaurant full of people, and then it's over. And then he goes back to normal life, and it's just another acting clinic put on by Billy Crudup, who's a fantastic actor anyway. And Jennifer Connelly, who's kind of sprinkled throughout the movie, does a great job. So that is Waking the Dead. Number one, we have a movie called S.F.W. Now, I won't say what S.F.W. stands for. That's to watch the movie to figure that out, and it won't take long. Or if you look it up, you'll figure it out, spoil it for yourself, whatever. The movie's called S.F.W. And I remember hearing about this because it's from 1994. And I remember hearing about it, seeing the poster, and it had a great soundtrack. It features Radiohead's song Creep, which was their breakout hit. It has other great songs on the soundtrack too, though. But you've got Stephen Dorff as Cliff Spab, and you've also got Jake Busey, Reese Witherspoon, various great actors in this movie. And he's basically Cliff and his best friend Joe went to the local convenience store to get beer, and among other people who were in there, they get held hostage by this terrorist group called Split Image, and they're forced to be on camera for 30 days, I think, before the hostage situation resolves itself. I won't say how, it just does, and then they're set free. And it's basically all the publicity that comes down on him and Reese Witherspoon's character on like what happened, because they didn't know that the whole world was watching the entire time, the entire month they were trapped in the convenience store. But everyone has basically been watching this reality show of a hostage situation for a month, and he has to deal with like, okay, this whole time I've been on camera, and do I want to talk to the press? He just wants to be left alone. And how do you react? And it'd almost be like if the contestants on Survivor had cameras on them but didn't know that the entire world was watching that whole game show, and then they get released back into the public, and It's like, oh my God, why is everyone talking to me? Why? No one can really know what went on, and they can't understand. But he has to deal with the fact that he's a celebrity now. But just great soundtrack, great performances, and the movie ages very well. Got Stephen Dorff, Reese Witherspoon, Jake Busey, Joey Lauren Adams, Pamela Gidley, Jack Noseworthy as his best friend Joe. A very small, not quite blink and you miss it, but a very small cameo by, oh, what's his name? Spider-Man from the Sam Raimi films. Blanking on his name. Sorry. Tobey Maguire. Yeah. It's very, 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 very small cameo by Tobey Maguire in there, and you recognize him, but he's got like big, like kind of shaggy hair, playing sort of like a just a teen kid on the street. Anyway, excellent movie. Very, very the epitome of 90s movies, kind of, if you ask me, but it's not a bad thing. So, all right, so I think that's the end of that list, and I know what will be the next top 10 films that I'm going to do. Whether it's next or not, I don't know, but I'll leave that to the imagination. All right, so until next time, thanks for watching, and toodles.